During the events that occurred in Salem in 1692, over 200 people were accused of witchcraft. 20 of them were murdered, and at least 13 died in jail. People were accused by their neighbors, friends, and families, sent to unfair trials, and encouraged to plead guilty. What could cause people to turn against the ones they are closest to, knowing what could happen to them? The trial started in February 1692 after Betty Paris, age 9, and Abigail Williams, age 11, began to show signs of bewitchment. Many people are familiar with the events that occurred during the witch trials, but few are aware of the history prior to the convictions. In 1634, a family, the Putnams, originally from Buckinghamshire, England, migrated to the Massachusetts Bay Colony. Once they arrived, many of the colonists settled in Salem. However, some of the settlers, including the Putnams, decided that the land just outside the colony was more suitable and moved about 5 miles outside of Salem. The outside land would become known as Salem Village, while the original land was called Salem Town. At first, Salem Village did not have a separate identity from Salem Town, and they were expected to attend church in Salem Town and help preserve the town. As the population of Salem Village grew larger, they began to petition for their independence. When Salem Town refused to grant the Salem Village their independence, battle lines were drawn. Not even allowing Salem Village their own church would erase those lines. Around this time, two families rose and took power in each sector: the Putnams in Salem Village and the Porters in Salem Town. The Porters, very wealthy, quickly caused the Putnam family to grow jealous. So in 1672, when a Porter-owned dam flooded Putnam lands, a lawsuit was quickly drawn up. After losing the lawsuit, the Putnams began to criticize the Porter family's every move. When the Porters hired Reverend Samuel Parris as the minister of Salem Town in 1689, the Putnams began to attack Reverend Parris. Parris was outraged and took an immediate disliking to the Putnam family. Just 3 years later, when Reverend Samuel Parris's daughter, Betty Paris, and his niece, Abigail Williams, were bewitched, the Putnam family was blamed. What could have caused the girls to accuse others of witchcraft? Could they have been convinced? One of the first afflicted girls was Anne Putnam, daughter of Anne Carr Putnam Sr. Anne Sr. was married to a prominent figure in Salem Village, Thomas Putnam, and the family had a lot of enemies. As the trials began, the fear of being framed by one of their many enemies became prominent. Could the Putnams have accused others in an attempt to avoid being accused themselves? Anne Sr.'s mental health should also be considered when looking at the many people she accused of witchcraft. Anne Sr. was known to be mentally unstable, but she took a turn for the worse when her sister, Mary, and her 3 young nieces died in succession from illness. Shortly after, her father, a wealthy milling business owner, died and Anne Sr. was disinherited. Despite filing a lawsuit, Anne Sr. could not win her share of the money. 2 months later, her infant daughter died. Some believe that these events caused Anne Sr. and her family to falsely accuse others of witchcraft. When Anne Sr. began to accuse people of witchcraft, her brother-in-law, Joseph Putnam, told Anne that if her lies about witchcraft touched anyone in his family, she would pay for it. Tituba, a slave in Reverend Parris's house, was one of the first to admit to witchcraft. At first, Tituba refused to admit to the crimes, but one day in court she confessed. Tituba confessed of signing the devil's book, flying in the air upon a pole, seeing cats, wolves, birds, and dogs, and pinching and choking some of the afflicted girls. When asked to reveal more witches in Salem, Tituba accused Sarah Osborne. Tituba later confided that Reverend Parris had beaten her and forced her to confess, but it was too late. Sarah Osborne was tried at court, and after multiple sessions, she confessed that she had heard voices, but she did not act on them. Osborne was sent to jail, where she later died. The mystery of the Salem witch trials hysteria can be traced back to individuals who contributed greatly to the confusion. Although religious dependency was a key factor in causing the trials, the accusations would have gone nowhere if not for individuals with their own agendas.